Yeah, we're sitting in Transmitter Gallery. This is my first solo exhibition dedicated to New York City punks of color. This is 10 years of documenting POC bands in New York City. But yeah, I want to talk about our collaboration because Kurt and I have been friends for a while, and Kurt has documented a lot of the messengers, your foot messengers. But I'll let you introduce yourself. And
Yeah, Kurt Boone, and kind of grew up around photography. My dad was a family photographer and had a lot of photographers built to the house, and just, loved photography, early on. But I didn't actually start shooting until about 15 years ago. So, I love digital cameras. I didn't start earlier because I was having problems shooting film. But once I got into digital, it was like just gun ho and going for it. But long story short, I kind of specialize in street photography. Got started in the bike messenger world, photographed the Gat scene, because I was a messenger. So I had access to it. And
but you weren't only a messenger; you were a foot messenger.
I'll put that in there. Yeah. But I didn't photograph that much foot messengers because there wasn't really a subculture around it. Even though, like, us messengers, we all worked in the same, building, kind of like, but the bike messengers had their own kind of subculture scene that invited me to come. So that's how I got invited to come to it. And since I used to ride bikes as a kid, I was familiar with riding bikes. But that said, I started shooting street and, eventually just making my own books and stuff. And I've done, so you may know, I've done 30 books, 8 books on poetry. The rest of the books are photographs and poetry. And these are all self-published. So really into the whole self-publishing, what you would call movement. When I first started, it was really something to be, people looked down on you to self-publish a book, but now it's all the rage. So, but started making blogs, and came across Destiny on some of the scenes, various scenes, and the street photography scene is very kind of close, but I don't know what scene we.
No, we met through Constance, our friend Constance, who is an amazing street artist.
Yeah.
And during the pandemic, she started painting in Soho when they started boarding up all of the businesses down there.
Mm-hmm.
And she started doing her murals on there. And then that's when Kurt was documenting all of the murals that were popping up around the neighborhood. And Constance, the one, was like, oh, Kurt has the whole documentation of that time period in Soho during the pandemic. And that's how I learned of your work. It was a giant book. I don't know how many pages.
Oh yeah, it's 200 some odd pages. So, but that said, I knew about you by reading about you in different expeditions, but I didn't meet you really in person or right into Constance really, hooking up with Constance. I guess that was 5 years ago.
Yeah, so we've been in passing for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think we both always wanted to collaborate with each other, and I think the universe aligned. And this is our first collaboration.
Yeah. I mean, I had the opportunity to do a show on the Lower East Side, and I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I don't think I want to do a solo show in the Lower East Side by myself. I just thought, what, I'd like to maybe collaborate with somebody. So I contacted Destiny, and she was all fourth. So I was happy. Wow, that's cool. So we met a couple of times, and we talked, we started picking out pictures, stuff like that, and eventually, it didn't seem like it was going to be so easy. So this event called Bike Kill was coming out. So he said, okay, let's shoot Bike Kill. And it's a great event. Some of you guys know about Bike Kill, but it's a great event to photograph. Just that subculture but that subculture wants to remain underground. So making a book about it is not cool with them, right? Because they're very protective of their
We want to respect the bike collective.
Right.
I don't want to be on any vector.
Yeah, you know that term. But in between that time, I had did this project with Evolving Press, which is dancing on concrete, and I met Holly maybe a year ago at the Black Zine Fair, and I saw she was like printing books and selling zines, and I was like, wow, this is mad cool. You know, you said like, what's your process? But what really kicked in was the Risograph, right? So I did a show in Boston last year, and they had 3 days of Risograph workshops and events. And I was like, yo, what? Am I in the wrong show? Because I just like, my books weren't Risograph, and I didn't know about this technology. So I felt really strange in Boston. So I said, man, like, what do I do? But I managed to get out of it. I sold some of my books, but I said, yeah, I got to learn what this Risograph is. So when I met Holly at the Black Zine Fair, she did Risograph. I said, wow, let me talk to her about that. So I told her, hey, I've been shooting 15 years. I have an archive. Can I submit a project to you? She said, yeah. So my idea was to come up with some of my photographs when dancing in the street in New York. So I've been photographing that almost 15 years too. You know, various street dancing, from break dancing to buskers, and you're just out there, and I would photograph. So I picked up a little archive from doing it, and I gave her a sampling of it, and she was able to come out with this, dancing on concrete, right? To what she does. So, but we could come back. I'm going to come back to Pulse, but maybe this will segue into what Holly does with her publishing company. Because she, not only does she help artists like me, but she helps out a lot of artists that are coming up. And she could tell you a little bit more about her practice.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everyone. I'm Holly. I am part of Irrelevant Press, which is a zine collective. Collective is maybe generous. There's mostly 2 people that do a lot of the work, and then a lot of other people who come in and support project by project or because they want to collaborate. But we've been making zines now for 10 years, which is pretty wild to think about. And we started out, myself and my main collaborator, writing for other people's zines. A lot of poetry, as you do when you're young, and photography, and my collaborator works in commercial printing. So she works on like big digital presses that print like, you know, corporate brochures and magazines and things like that. And so she had access to these spaces after hours, you know, if people didn't know she was in there. And so we started being able to print our own work. And from there, it kind of grew. We started offering printing to other people. At the time, I was living in the Bay Area. That's where we started the collective. We eventually got our own studio, got a Risograph machine. If you're not familiar with Risograph, it's like an old school printer. It kind of works like screen printing, where for at least the machine that I have, you print one color at a time. You burn an image into a screen, and then that screen is essentially what's used to print copies. It's like an old school copy machine, which has become very popular in the last few years for zine making or art making. And there's a lot of that happening in New York. So I'm in good company. I moved to New York like 8 years ago and started running the press out here as well. I'm working with New York-based artists. My collaborators are still in California, in the Bay Area, and so they work with a lot of folks on the West Coast as well. And we really, like Kurt said, work on anything, any kinds of projects. Our focus being people who are publishing their work for the first time in book form, the goal to make printing and publishing as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. But we have done everything from photography to educational zines to work for organizers and mostly zines, some books, some prints. Yeah, so that's Relative Press. And then, Kurt and I met about a year ago, as he said, at a zine fair, which is where I meet a lot of people that we end up collaborating with. I was selling our Irrelevant Press's work. He brought some copies of his book, and we just kind of got to talking. And I think something that is really interesting with photography and Risograph is that Risograph is not well suited to photography at all. It is incredibly labor intensive. Every piece of paper in this book went through the printer 3 to 6 times. Every single piece of paper was touched by my hands. And I think it was like 40 something pages. We made 100 copies. There's only 20 that have been done, so I didn't do that much work. But it is a very labor-intensive process, and I think something that I was thinking about when I was binding the books this morning was just like how that feels important to the process, and how when I think about DIY art of any kind, like whether it's making books or it's shooting or it's being a musician performing in the street, it takes so much more work to get there and do that than if you have all of the resources behind you to like have a show. And, you know, if you're a famous band and someone puts all of your equipment on the stage, like obviously you do work to get there. But I was thinking about that today, like the labor that goes into producing this kind of like work that has this DIY ethos is like a very important part of it. And I think is a reason that I keep making books and keep making books with other people and making that form, the book form, an accessible, art.
DIY is so, it's almost crossing over to being commercial on a smaller scale. Not in the sense of making 10,000 copies, but being able to sell it. So when you can go to the head librarian at the Met Museum and they buy copies to put in the Met to preserve, you don't get that. You just don't make a handmade thing and get it to the Met or the Museum of Modern Art. And that's just a couple of the museums. I mean, right now, all these libraries and museums, they're all collecting what you call artist books, right? So it's a great time for DIY right now. Just being able to like take your idea and create from it, and you just never know like what comes from it. And so all these like pictures in here, musicians just playing their sound. It's incredible where DIY is going these days.
No, for sure. Yeah, to touch on that, it's just like I'm also thinking about punk scene, the music scene, how it just like we had all these venues like pre-pandemic that were alive and thriving, and then once the pandemic happened and then things were opening back up, like a lot of those venues didn't make it through. So it's like we had to go back to our roots and just go back to the do-it-yourself culture, and just like some of these images here represent like there's a show that was just out of necessity because we don't have many venues, and shows now are like $25 to $40. Like who can afford that right now to go to a local punk show? So we had to just take it to the streets and use what we have. And like this is a representation of just like taking it to the streets, getting a generator, people power, and like for an example, one of them is on the Williamsburg Bridge. So it's just like organizing that, trekking all of the equipment and posting the flyer like 30 minutes before the actual show happens. And it's just like it's a labor of love, but that's where we're at right now, so
Really
yeah,
it's great. I was just saying, like in making posts, me and Destiny had a couple of meetings just
We had
brainstorming. Yeah, line 80, brainstorm.
we had a lot of meetings.
What could we come up with? What could we come up with? And finally, we landed on, music in the city.
Kurt, like, showed me so many different, like, because he's published so many books, and he showed me so many, examples. He's like, oh, we're collaborating, so what style, like, are you interested in? Yeah. And then when I saw the Dancing on Concrete risograph, I'm like, this is just so elegant and beautiful, but I've never seen photos, like, in risograph. Like, it was my first time seeing this, and I was like, I would like to see what our photos would look like together, printed on this. And I also wanted to learn, like, what is that process like? So we were picking, like, Holly's brain and invited to her studio to see how it's printed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was definitely a treat to, like, learn a little bit about that.
Right. And, this whole risograph is very, very interesting. I'm glad I'm able to participate in it and have fun with it and, not be so locked in to how the image look. Let the machine do something, add to it. You know what I mean? So it's mad cool, Rizzo.
And just experimenting too, because there's a page. Oh, we'll flip through it later.
Yeah. Maybe we can go.
Oh yeah, I guess we can look through. Yeah, so it was more of a conversation, like, between Kurt and I's, like, street performer photos, and then just, like, photos that I made throughout the years at shows. So we were just trying to link. Hi, welcome. Yeah, come on. Hi, I'm flipping through the book for a moment. Oh my god.
You want me to flip through?
Oh yeah, you can go next.
No, let me.
Oh, you want to say something?
Yeah. Okay, so this is Sonia Wright and her husband. So her husband is a real famous bucket trucker, right? And he's done shows on Broadway, but his hustle is busking in the subway. So those of them at work, and they work hard, and by their need, some of those buckets are full of cash. So I don't know how much money they pay, but it looks pretty good. But yeah, no, I'll just say that. But they're better than bucket truckers.
Okay, so then I'll catch up my photos since you.
Yeah.
Alright, so this is Ricardo. He's in a band, well, ex-band, because punk bands don't usually last that long. Yeah, so this was a band, R.I.P. maybe, I'm like, called Rebels Chaos, and this was actually when things were just opening back up at a basement show at a local, like, DIY spot called Viva Los Secos in Bushwick. So, yeah, this is him playing the show in the basement during that time.
I just have a quick question here. So, something I think is interesting about the project as a whole, but specifically this spread, is like the ephemerality of these shows, right? These are people performing in a subway station. This is, as you said, punk bands aren't around for that long. I wonder if you could just speak to, like, your photography practices. Like, why is it important to you to shoot community members, shoot shows in this way? And, like, do you think about creating an archive? Is it like different than that? Like, if you could.
Yeah, no, there's definitely. Well, it all started just with my own personal experience going to shows. As a teenager, like, my first show in middle school was going to a show at Tompkins Square Park. Saw, like, a crust punk band called Leftover Crack. But but just, like, going to shows, like, I didn't really see a reflection of myself being represented, and I also didn't feel comfortable expressing myself to the fullest of capacity because, I just didn't feel comfortable. Like, it was mostly white, male dominated, really aggressive, and so later in life, my friend, he was in a band called Mala Vista, invited me to a show in Brooklyn. It was a basement show, and he asked me, he's like, hey, can you snap some photos of my band? And I go, and I just see, like, it was just so welcoming. It was a different experience, and the show was called Punks of Color, and then I was like, this is my dream show. I finally see like bands, like Latino punks, like Black punks, Asian, but like it was just my dream show. So after that, I was like, well, what's the next show? Became obsessed. And so I've been documenting the scene throughout all the 5 boroughs. Like, and I even laugh because I'm like, yeah, even Staten Island. So for me, it's like I'm preserving like New York City punks of color culture because it's important. Like when I look up that, I don't see that. I'm like, I want to have something, and I do have a book. It's like a 400-page book of New York City punks of color, and that was 6 years of just like me being obsessed, documenting, you know, the scenes, because it's just like, you know, the ska scene, we have the we have the Latino punk scene, we have Black punk scene. So it's just like I really wanted to tap into all of those subcultures and showcase them.
Oh, yeah. Poster.
Our process shots. This was one of my favorite spreads, honestly. Because we looked through many photos together and we're like, well, how are photos going to talk to each other?
Yeah. You had me crop the photo so that I can bring the picture closer to the frame.
Yeah.
I'm distance away from the artist, so I'm not in the artist's face with my camera. But I'm getting a clear shot. But she wanted it closer because a lot of her stuff was very close. So, Destiny, how close are you?
I'm Meadow. It was really close, right?
I love that. I'm always like, yay! Yeah. That was in the backyard of because it changed names 6 billion times. That's right. It was over by Our Wicked Lady.
Yeah, in that area.
Yeah, one of the Kingston spots. That was.
But I feel like as Meadow, we've known each other for a very long time.
And since the beginning, since I started like doing music live, like almost 5
I feel
years
like,
now.
you know, once you have that relationship with the artist, like it kind of performed for you a little bit.
True. That's exactly what was happening. That's exactly what happened. That's what it was.
But you also look at the texture of what the Risograph did, because without the Risograph, you're not just going to have that background or that color come out like that. So that's very interesting. So Holly, could you tell me a little bit about how the Risograph machine takes some of these color photographs and kind of just changes them?
Yeah, so I touched a little bit about this before. So the way that my Risograph works is it's a single color drum that prints. So every color is printed separately. So in this case, instead of using like traditional CMYK, you know, digital printer photography, it's actually using teal ink, red ink, and yellow ink. So there are a lot of colors in this picture. Meadow, which is amazing. I like how it actually looks a lot different than the original digital image, just because you can only get, you know, so close with Risograph, and that photo in particular is a lot of like bright pinks, and I mean the yellow we could capture, but not so much the pink. It was kind of like muted down to a red, and the blues were kind of shifted more green. But yeah, I think that was also part of kind of the collaboration between the three of us, was deciding, you know, how the images were going to change when they were translated from digital images into physical images, specifically physical images printed on Risograph. So yeah, we did spend some time in the studio, printing some copies and learning about how Risograph works. But yeah, it's definitely not like one-to-one.
Yeah,
the digital image by any means.
Right. Okay.
Let's go to the next side. Yeah, and this was also another moment where...
Yeah, I mean, this is, at least for me, this is a street art festival in the South Bronx. And the goal of the festival is to beautify the Bronx. So that they're able to get the best street artists in the city to come up to the South Bronx and paint walls. But they have DJs playing while the artists are playing live. So that image in the background, which is the Boone Avenue Walls style writing piece, that was a couple of years before, because they kept that one, they didn't go over it couple years before I took the photograph after it. So, but the DJ just had this enormous setup. But I thought it was like incredible. And I just, he's right in front of the Mario, and I just thought it was a great photograph to show the DJ and hip hop culture, right? So this is hip hop they're playing. So it's real, and he's on vinyl. You know what I mean? He's not, using the computer, per se, with music played on the computer. So it's actually vinyl, old school. And I shot that maybe 2023. And the Risograph kind of makes it really different, but it's okay for what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because like the way that we went through the edits, it was like, okay, Kurt, you pick a photo and then I'll find a photo that I feel like resonates with, the energy happening in that image. So when I saw the graffiti in the background, and then I also realized just flipping through the book, I'm like, wow, I really just pay attention a lot to the crowds versus the actual bands. But yeah, so this image, I guess, I don't know which photo came first, but when I saw Kurt's image, I was like, the graffiti on these walls complement his, and I'm just like, he's playing music and they're like moshing and having fun. I felt like it was a great juxtaposition to like aligning both of our images together and for them to talk to each other.
And I love, the smashing the hip hop sound versus the punk, right? It's really interesting contrast and how grassroots it is, right? It just shows, and how graffiti is being looked at in the city as well. Like it's part of the exterior in the city, right? Seen everywhere. And how people are used to it, So, but yeah, because those are two great photos.
Ooh, this one too.
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah.
He definitely wanted to change that, like the black and white. I didn't do that. I'm not a fan of black and white. I don't know why. So, but anyway, just me.
We have our own opinion.
Oh, yes, she has her own way of doing it.
No, but I'm glad I like the way it turned out on the Risograph because like the orange or red, I don't know what color it was like really popping on it. So I'm happy it was turned out. But yeah.
And this guy's got the Jimi Hendrix look. He's really like pushing that beam, and he's in the subway. And again, like this is the power of DIY, right? They're not paying him to go out there. He's coming himself. He's powering himself to put himself in the public. So this is great. How the music in the city just is all around us.
Street action. We can keep flipping. So there's my day again.
That last one with the Bible is pretty cool. If we go back.
Big clouds, yeah.
So this is interesting. Yesterday we talked, and I was flipping through my images. She said, "Oh, I like this one." I said, "All right, cool." And she juxtaposed this one, which is quite interesting. So this young lady in your picture, she just what?
This was a show that Meadow actually
This was
played.
one of my first.
Oh, really? It was
Like I said, he since the beginning. It's so crazy.
Wow.
It's
This was
emotional.
at the People's Garden in Brooklyn during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And this was after Meadow performed, or before, I don't remember.
I think it was.
Oh yeah, so I was just like, I need to make a portrait of you, and that was the look you gave me. So that's what we got.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I don't know, it was your expression, and like just the cut, the white and the black also like corresponds with the woman, and the violinist. So I don't know, it was just a feeling that I got from seeing Kurt's performance.
That's in Brooklyn. Mine is at the World Trade Center. Totally different setting that, they're performing in these subway stations, right? Because a lot of my stuff, I did a whole book on buskers called Subway Beats. Came out roughly almost 10 years ago, right? So, dating myself. But for 5 years, just shooting buskers. But this is quite interesting, and her whole outfit to me was quite interesting, and the electric violin is it's awesome, you know, and her whole clothing and stuff. But look at the different areas in the city. Mine's is downtown, World Trade. Hers is in Brooklyn, which I find we didn't tell that story, but it's quite interesting.
That's
Yeah, that's the back of the book.
Yeah.
That's a group that was playing in Washington Square Park, playing jazz. It just happened that this guy just had 2 horns in it. And I can't, night and day, think of what he was playing out of it. Oh, I know they were playing jazz, and I was snapping away. You know, and then that he's occupied, I could get in his face with the camera. And that's how that came out. But the more I look at that photograph, it's pretty amazing. And he's got the real cool jazz look. You know how John used to look cool? He's got the hat, he's got the glasses, the sound, yeah. So that's really great. That's his stuff.
Collage.
So that's how he's
The
processed, right?
process, yeah.
Yeah, so you can kind of see in these ones that are more reddish, this is the yellow and the red layers having been printed on top of each other, and the final layer is the teal. So yeah, just intended to give a sense of what the risograph process was like. Again, every piece of paper went through the printer so many times, and I was very lucky that nothing broke. The last 2 weeks of printing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. It tells you the process of being an artist and making these books, Holly. You're really an artist, right? So that's great. If you pull this together. Oh, look at that.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And that's what you mean by here. Because those are prints that you actually put together.
And bound.
Right.
And bound. Right.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there are machines that will collate pieces of paper for you. I don't have one of those machines, so I touch every piece myself. But that's what my morning looked like today.
So would you buy one of those machines in the future, or are you just just buy?
It's kind of meditative, honestly. Sometimes my partner will be like, "Oh, you've been in your studio for 3 hours. There's no music on. There's no TV on. You're just in silence printing." Yeah, I don't know. I like it. I I get into a flow state or something. But I also, listening to readings at work and things while I was putting sheets of paper in orders up. Yeah. And then I think, last one is just shout out to what's coming up for everyone. So,
Yes.
Kurt, you want to talk about your show?
I have a solo show in a couple of weeks in Durham, North Carolina. I got invited.
If anyone's traveling down.
I don't know who's going to Durham. It's a few miles from Duke University, so if you want to view some of Duke, you can.
Yeah, and the closing party is this Saturday, 7 to 9, you come through. And Sunday is the actual, final last day to, check out the exhibit, so come through.
You're not tired, right?
No, this is me next week. Irrelevant Press is a monthly speaker series where people are invited to come do a presentation for 15 minutes on a topic of their choice. And that each of the presenters picks someone else to present the next week. So it's intended to create this physical network of people. And it's hosted at Secret Riso Club, which, if you haven't been, is an amazing bookstore, press, studio, not far from here on Central. Check them out. They sell books. They make books. They're also here.
Oh, wow.
If you want to talk to them.
Yeah, I'd love to meet them.
And I think that's it.
Yay. Okay.
Guess what?